of Ryan Irvine, California. You're on the Sean Hannity Show.
Hi, Sean. I really appreciate you taking my call.
It says that you're a big lib, capitalism stinks, and I'm a product of it. That's what it says on my call screener. Is that right?
That's pretty funny.
Well, is that what you said?
Actually, I am definitely against capitalism.
No.
But there's one thing I'd like to clarify, first of all.
No.
Although I think you're an agent of capitalism because the major capitalist still on the board of News Corp.
Agent.
You yourself are not a capitalist because you work and have a job. Capitalism is usury. One of the biggest mistakes that people make, I hear on talk radio, is they refer to all business as capitalism. And that's not the case.
It's usury. Let me ask you a question. So why don't people, if they don't like capitalism in a free society, why don't you go start your own business, or why don't you and your liberal friends, why don't you compete, why don't you get competitive? You know, for example, the Fox News Channel was founded, we just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. Now, MSDNC, the Democratic National Committee Talking Points, led by Joe Scarborough, their favorite lib, lib Republican. Why don't you start a network and compete? Why don't you get a newspaper and get it going? Why don't you go out there and start a liberal talk radio network? Why don't you feel that you have the ability to compete in a society that offers freedom?
Okay, Sean, can I make a point here, first of all? Yeah. Let me tell you why I don't like capitalism. Can I tell you why I don't like it?
Because you want to spread the wealth around. Go ahead.
No, because with capitalism, what happens is you end up paying higher taxes because capitalists loan money to the government, and then you have to pay it back. So the people that are raising your tax are capitalists. Mm-hmm. Capitalists need to raise the taxes to pay back the interest and the principal on the $15 trillion that they've given to our government.
Here's the problem. Well, first of all, a lot of that money is being borrowed from China and elsewhere around the world. And actually, if you look at where the government borrows money, it's also from individuals through treasury notes that they offer. So you're wrong on the merits of all of this. Secondly, capitalism, I mean, there's only one other option, and that's state control over the media, socialism, communism, redistribution. All of those forms of government have been tried. All of them have failed. There's never been a history of a country that has accumulated wealth where people have come from nothing and have been allowed to be successful because first they live free and because the system allows them to bring their talents to the marketplace, and then they get a chance to make money. I mean, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs are just two examples of this. In the case of Steve Jobs, I mean, he is a bright guy that created products. He didn't force anyone to buy them. He didn't force anybody to take them. He put them out there. People liked them and bought them. That's capitalism. That's pure capitalism.
Sean, you are completely missing the point. I'm not talking about people that make products. I am talking about usury.
Well, people make services too.
Sean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about usury. I'm talking about bankers loaning money to our government, and
I just got done telling you, if government would live within their means, they wouldn't have any problems with usury or interest on debt. But the fact of the matter is, yes, there are some banks and there are some people that work in the financial industry. They do sell treasuries on behalf of the government, but the government is selling it because the government spends more than it takes in. The easy answer to that is don't spend more than you take in.
Sean, the capitalists are the one that are supporting the liberals.
Listen, nobody's forcing the government to borrow money, except that the government can't live with. No, you don't want to face this truth. You are somehow blaming the people that lend money to the government for the fact that the government's borrowing the money. You know, for you to just blame it on these evil capitalists, what would you do? What would they, if they don't lend them the money? Then what happens right now to the federal government is we'd go bankrupt because we're spending more than we take in. Our promises to people in terms of entitlements are beyond what we could ever pay them. And unless somehow we get to a point where we reform all these things, we're always going to have these problems. The government the government is the one that borrows the money. So you're bringing it to the next step to the people that lend it.
The one that borrows the money. You're right about that.
Well, then that's the problem, right there.
And look, can I tell you? Here's the thing. Your ideas about how to spend money are very intelligent, but the bankers who are loaning the money are supporting liberals.
But you're going to step two. Here's step one. Government wants to borrow money. Step two,
No, but that's
it borrows
the whole thing,
money
Sean.
from people.
The government doesn't need to borrow money, Sean.
Yes, it does need to borrow.
The government is the most powerful government in the world.
Excuse
so
me.
why would they need to borrow money from a private group?
They need to borrow
That
it
makes
because
no
they're
sense.
spending the money. You can't just print it. That's called inflation. It would
Sean, look at
devalue the dollar. It would devalue, you'd spend $1 to buy, I don't know, a 5-cent piece of gum. I mean, that would be the net result of just printing money. It has no value at that point. So it does need some root and value, but I think we're way off base here.